had that experience where somebody in a place of power and authority basically told you you're broken. So who
Yeah.
are you in our society and the way people or the way women have been raised up to view themselves? Who are
Yep.
you to say otherwise, right?
100%. I have no shame in saying that. I'm like, that's absolutely what happened.
Hey, Mama Bear. Welcome to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. Do you dream of bonding with your baby through exclusive breastfeeding, but worry about breastfeeding pain or low milk supply? Maybe you're struggling with breastfeeding and no one seems to have any answers. I'm Jamie, doula, international board certified lactation consultant, and mom of 5, and I have been where you are. After working through painful latches, milk supply worries, and postpartum depression, and supporting countless mothers through their breastfeeding journeys for over 8 years, I'm here to tell you breastfeeding doesn't have to be perfect to be positive. Each week, I'll share breastfeeding tips to help you prevent and overcome unexpected breastfeeding challenges so you can actually enjoy bonding with your baby. If you are ready to shut out the toxic whispers of the world, embrace your God-given intuition, and release your inner fierce mama bear, grab some coffee or your favorite herbal tea and let's dive in.
We are here today with Nicole Kristensen. Nicole is going to share her story of struggling with breastfeeding multiple times and then finally creating the breastfeeding experience that she has dreamed of and always wanted to have, to bring you proof that breastfeeding does not always have to be perfect to be positive, and that just because you struggle once does not mean you are doomed for failure. We are so glad to have you here. If you can just share a little bit about your story, who you are, how many kiddos you have, and your breastfeeding goals in the past, and just bring some wisdom and hope to the mamas listening today.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jamie. As you mentioned, my name is Nicole, and I have been a mom now for 5 years, almost 5 years. My oldest will be 5 at the end of the year. And I recently just had my third baby, Anthony. So he is just shy of 2 months, which, it's still pretty early, but as you mentioned, I'm here to just kind of share a little bit about my breastfeeding experiences, especially since I also became a doula in that process, and I've been also working in this field professionally. It's just really interesting to, one, have just more knowledge, more connections, but the biggest thing, and I'll just kind of jump right into it, is building that the confidence to even just start it, to just do it. So, and I also have my little guy nursing and choking on right now as we speak. So from the beginning with my first, it was a typical 2020 birth. It was a rough time for everybody. So let's just put that out there as the premise. 2020 was rough, depending on who you are and what you're doing. My dear friend, she had her baby in February of 2020, and she was able to be home for so much. And I saw her breastfeeding her daughter, and it was so beautiful, and she just made it look so wonderful. And really, God bless her for making it look as awesome as she did. I think she did an amazing job with her daughter. And if anything, it was inspiring to me. And I was like, that's right. Like, I have to breastfeed my kids. That's normal. Even though I grew up on formula, pretty much my whole family was formula fed, with the exception of maybe my aunts tried it a couple times. My mom may have tried it here and there, but formula was kind of just the original plan for most moms, for what I was otherwise used to. But I was like, oh, I gotta breastfeed too. Like, that's kind of what needs to happen. And long story short, I ended up with a somewhat traumatic, unplanned C-section with my first. And if anything, that wasn't the worst part. It was my experience in postpartum in the hospital that I was in at that time. Because I did end up delivering my third at the same hospital and had a much better experience, which I'll touch on soon. And I just remember it was maybe day 2 or 3 even, because we were there for a while. I was, doing what I thought the lactation consultants that came in were like, oh, everything looks great. He looks great. They were all otherwise pretty optimistic because I'd never done this before. I just thought, oh, he just latches and he eats and there you go. And generally speaking, that's how it works, but not always, right?
Not always.
No, not always. I had soon learned, but not really, because then I had one nurse that came in. As far as I'm concerned, she was at least a lactation consultant in some way, shape, or form. And she came in, and I just remember like he was crying and fussy, and I was getting frustrated because, again, I'm the oldest and like one of the first in my family to have a kid among like all my cousins, except for my one cousin, but he doesn't breastfeed because he's a man, so which I firmly believe. Other than that, I was basically the first to experience this. I didn't really know what to do because I didn't have really any other examples aside from my one friend. I had a lot of other friends that had kids and breastfed, but I didn't see them all the time. They were kind of a little bit, quote unquote, ahead of me here in the parenting game. And this nurse immediately was like, he's crying, he's hungry, like he needs to eat and he's not getting enough. And she just comes back with formula. She's like, he needs to eat formula. And I was just like, okay. And I kid you not, my husband can vouch for this. I started bawling my eyes out, like right in front of her. I was crying and I felt so much disappointment. And this is the thing. I also didn't try. I don't want to say I didn't try, but I didn't feel passionate enough. By the time I got home, I felt defeated. Instead of feeling like, oh, well, you can still go home and find a lactation consultant. You know, your baby's only 5 days old. Like, you can still have someone work with you. Even during COVID, there would have been someone if I just really probably kicked it in gear. And I remember like browsing and asking some Facebook mom groups and like, oh, the county offers lactation and this and that, but it was COVID, so the county clearly wasn't going to be doing that. It would have had to have been someone private probably at that point. And so I just was kind of like, I didn't want to deal with it. And, you know, I felt otherwise alone and defeated by the time I got home. So I maybe tried to pump, but I didn't have any experience with pumping. I didn't know really much about it. I had probably at that time a terrible pump. I just got a free pump, not knowing what kinds of pumps were out there. And it was just very disappointing. I was like, and I can't pump, I can't produce milk, even though I was engorged by the 5th day. And I knew I had to do something about that. That much I knew. But because I hadn't really practiced latching fully by the end of my hospital visit, I was just like, I'm not going to try at home. I don't know what I'm doing.
And you had that experience where somebody in a place of power and authority basically told you you're broken. So who are you in our society and the way people or the way women have been raised up to view themselves? Who are you to say otherwise, right?
100%. I have no shame in saying that. I'm like, that's absolutely what happened. Whether or not she intended that, I don't know. But I mean, from what I remember, you know, being like, he's hungry, he's not eating, he needs formula, was just kind of like, what? Like, it was not on my plan. And that's basically why I cried. And my poor husband was like, he didn't know what to do. Because again, he kind of just thought it was like as simple as, oh, baby latches on and eats and we're all happy. And that's not always how it works. You probably will agree with me. I think many will also say that a big part of that is not being around a lot of women who breastfeed normally. It hadn't been the norm. It hadn't been the default for quite a few decades at this point, probably almost half a century. Right. And I'm not used to that. Even when my youngest brother was born, he's 14 years younger than me, I don't remember my mom really breastfeeding. She told me she tried maybe a little bit because he was kind of the last one. So aside from that, yeah, like I don't remember. And like if my aunt breastfed, I was too young to remember my cousins because we're all pretty close in age. So there was no example. There was really no one around me. So I didn't have that support. And my cousin, who had her baby maybe 6 months after I had my first, she was breastfeeding successfully, and she had delivered at the same hospital as me. In her case, it was because she had to bring the baby back for jaundice that someone actually was able to sit down with her, because she didn't go back to the postpartum unit. She went to like probably a pediatric floor or something, and someone was able to give her a little bit of attention, I think. And well, that's what she does tell me. She's like, if I hadn't gone back, I probably would have been struggling with breastfeeding too. And I was like, that's a really good point.
Sometimes you just get lucky, like who's on staff that
Yeah.
day, right?
Exactly. And I'm really glad for her that she was able to do that, because she breastfed for quite a while, and she's also doing it again now with her second. Fast forward to 2021, I got pregnant again within 8 months. I was only 8 months postpartum, and we got pregnant with our second, Zachary. And he just, I could tell you right off the bat, I was like, I'm not nursing. I'm not even going to try. That was my mindset. And here we go with it'll be better for my mental health. I know how I felt last time. It will be better for my mental health to maybe combo feed, because I also know the importance of breast milk, that there's a lot of really good health benefits to breast milk in and of itself, even if I just give him a little, I was telling myself. So I was like, I'll pump and formula feed at some point, or hopefully maybe do both in a combination for his entire first year. That was my goal. I linked up with a lactation consultant at the time, with a organization that was taking insurance, I guess. And I liked her. She was very lovely. I still think she's an awesome lady. But I think virtual, which I know you do, and it's very, very helpful. I highly recommend it. I do. But we need someone like you who can really help get a good plan. Even though I had someone, it was so, again, it was through like this insurance deal, and so it was like kind of limited on how much and what I could do. I felt like, I touched base here and there, and that was that, and she did her little notes, and that was that. I still didn't feel fully supported through that particular experience.
If I could stop you right there, that is
please.
such an important thing to talk about, is because, we always say, find a lactation consultant, find a lactation consultant.
Mhm.
And that is so important. But just like any other profession, not all lactation consultants practice the same way. Not all lactation consultants have the same training. I could do probably an entire series of 6 episodes on that alone. And that's not to say like, oh, I'm better than so and so and so and so. Like, that's not to say that I'm better than certain people. There's always going to be different people who fit well together. But one thing that you deserve, no matter if it's in person, in the hospital, virtually, whatever, you deserve somebody who's going to look at you, who is taking the time to consider your full experience, your full picture, and then create a plan that fits you and your goals. But not just that, like, they can't be giving you what I call one size fits all advice. I think a lot of these programs, especially, and I don't want to say anything bad about insurance covered care, because there's a lot of great insurance covered lactation consultants out there. But some of these programs that are like giant networks, they don't, how can I say this? They're not very different from the hospital in the sense that they maybe have protocols that tie the hands of the person practicing, or they tell them they can't say certain things, or there's just like a lot of red tape. And I think you deserve somebody who listens to you and answers to you and is going to say like, okay, this isn't working for you, let's shift that plan, let's tailor that plan, let's figure out why it's not working, instead of being like, well, this is what the textbook says and you should be doing this. Like, I'm going to be the first to be like, I don't say fed is best, I don't say breast is best, I say informed and supported is best. I believe in breast milk all day long. 100. I believe that breastfeeding is the absolute best option for mom and baby, but there's other factors that play into that sometimes make it not attainable. So even though on paper and textbook, this situation should be straightforward, that doesn't mean that real life is the same way. And we have to take that into consideration. And Sorry, I'm like going off on a tangent.
No,
But
it's
it's
absolutely
so
necessary.
frustrating when I
Yeah.
hear moms in your situation say things like, I saw this lactation consultant and she was nice, but she didn't give me what I needed. And it's hard because, like, okay, only have so much time postpartum.
Right.
You only have so much time. You don't have the time to be lactation consultant hopping, seeing 3 different lactation consultants, and then by the 4th one, you're like, why am I even going to keep doing this? And
Yep.
I'm an advocate for, like, if somebody's not giving you the support you deserve, finding somebody else. I advocate for that. But you only have
Yep.
so much time postpartum, and that is hard and emotional to keep being told, like, to keep being given bad advice or told you're broken by quote professionals over and over. Like, why would you keep seeking support? And that's why I like tell moms, I'm like, I know you saw 3 lactation consultants, but if you saw 3 lactation consultants and they didn't at least give you an answer and a plan, then they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And even in my situation, I wanted to focus on pumping. So it was kind of even, I feel, more difficult to do. Like, you really need someone to help you with the flange, make sure your measurements correct. I mean, yes, you can do that virtually, obviously. I'm
Well, and
not
that's the thing is you
disregarding
can
that, but it's so
no,
much more helpful for sure.
I know what you mean. Like, you
Yeah.
can do these things virtually, but how do I put this?
Yeah.
I think you can do just about everything in lactation consulting virtually. I don't think every lactation consultant can do that
Yes.
well.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's my point. Because, and especially with like that particular situation, it's like, I mean, I don't know what they're saying, you should do this, you should do that. Like, and this is great. That's why having you and other lactation consultants that can offer virtual services and be personalized. That's the important thing. That's kind of where I was getting at, where I didn't feel like I had that real personal support in that situation. I would have loved to have worked with you, for example, at that time, especially. So I pumped I don't want to say somewhat successfully, but I pumped for a month and
Do
I,
not minimize. Do not minimize
yeah,
what you
no,
did
I
do.
know.
Do not
Yeah.
minimize that.
And of course I was like looking at all the things, the power pumping, the this, the that, the scheduling. Like I had somewhat of like the basic understanding about that. But everyone, as a lot of mamas would know, and so much power to my pumping mamas, because you have to be on a regimented schedule if you're going to pump. Because if you're not nursing your baby, your body needs to get this milk signal somehow. So you have to be pumping, and it's a lot, especially in the beginning when you're establishing your supply. And I thought I was doing all this for my mental health, but it was already so exhausting. And then my family got like a stomach bug or something a month in, and I had no energy at that point. And I pretty much transitioned completely to formula a little over a month, maybe, yeah, after my son was born. And we just did that. And I'm also gonna throw this out there too, because this is a thing, the breastfeeding stigma in general, because my family was primarily formula fed. It sounds so ridiculous, but it was like, oh great, like what's my dad gonna say with me breastfeeding and this and that? Like it's always no, sorry, dad. It's always thinking about what is my dad gonna say? Formula's easy because then everyone can feed the baby. I can get the help I need. I can do things. I can have babysitters and help when I need it, because no one's going to bat an eye about mixing a formula bottle. So that was kind of a lot of it, like taking in the stigmas, allowing that to kind of dictate my mental health as well, and thinking that was going to be great. But here's the kicker. At that time was the formula crisis. So first I got hit with COVID, then I got hit with a formula crisis with my second. I was like, what is going on with the world? And everyone and their mother literally was on Facebook groups trying to share where the formula shelves were stocked. I had people shipping me formula and buying it and grabbing it whenever they were out. Thank God, I am so grateful that I have had people willing to spend money to do that for me. But my goodness, trying to do that and being like, how am I going to feed my baby? how are we going to keep affording to feed my baby at the same time?
Yeah, I
It's
think
like,
that's
what?
that's another like big point is formula is great when it's needed. It can
Yes.
absolutely be a tool,
Yes.
but when we're dependent on formula to the degree that our society is, what happens when that breaks down if it's not available? I had so many moms that I talked to during that time who were like, I was struggling with breastfeeding. And this was like not my clients. This was like friends, family, just like people I came across who, because I'm a lactation consultant, people are like, oh, let me tell you my whole breastfeeding thing. Like, it's so funny how it just like evokes like this super personal thing out of even strangers. They just like, so many moms said the same thing. It was, I was struggling with breastfeeding and my therapist told me to quit breastfeeding, or my pediatrician told me to quit breastfeeding for my mental health. And then this formula shortage happened and my mental health got 10 times worse. And all I could think about was, why didn't I try harder? Like, at least if I had breast milk, at least if I was pumping, I could have something to feed my baby. We wouldn't need as much formula. Like, that was the story I heard over and over and over. And it's something nobody wants to talk about, because everybody wants to talk about formula being a solution, a backup plan.
Right.
But it's not. It can be a tool, but it's not a solution, and it's not always a backup plan, because you can become so dependent on something else. And it's not even just, supply chain issues. It's the hurricane that went up through North Carolina and obliterated the Appalachia area. I'm getting chills thinking about it. Like, you could have had a whole stock of formula and it's gone and you can't get it. Like, there's just so many things that are unpredictable. And then even if you don't have any of those like crazy outlier things happen, just because your baby is struggling to breastfeed doesn't mean they're going to be able to bottle feed formula. There are so many moms that I work with that are like, oh, I thought bottle feeding formula would be the answer, and my baby can't take a bottle for some reason. And it's like, you need breastfeeding support. Like, you need breastfeeding support early. And I totally understand why moms make the decisions they do. But I always say it doesn't feel like a free choice when they're being pressured into that decision. And then they're locked into something that's, like you said, just as hard. It's just a different hard.
It is. Yeah. It really is like pick your hard in a way, because regardless of what we do, being moms and raising up our children to be as healthy as we possibly can be, there's going to be challenges. That's just life, right? So let's put that out there. It's just a matter of pick your hard. And I did learn that. I definitely learned that in my way and in the way needed. And also to note, like, my second was an even more traumatic birth than my first, unfortunately. So I was really struggling with not just the birth outcome, but just the I wouldn't call it abuse, but it was definitely borderline. It was pretty rough with how I felt I was treated. I went to a different hospital with a different group thinking things were going to be better. It was not, for some reason. I had such a weird situation that I was caught in the middle of the hospital and the birthing center, and the midwives like having issues with each other. And I didn't realize my birth was literally caught in the middle of that. So there was like probably tension between OBs and midwives. So I was like going through it
too, because that's the
going
mom.
through it.
Yeah, that's the mom that gets, she's the one who gets caught in the middle when they can't figure out how to act like professionals, and that's not fair.
Right. And my postpartum experience was okay. The second time at this different hospital, there was a lactation consultant. Maybe I saw her once because I wasn't planning. I was pumping. So she's like, here's like Medela pump stuff. And, that was kind of fun. Like, oh, I like taking the things home. I wanted to be a pumper because I like appliances. Let's put it that way. Come to my kitchen. My countertop is filled with things to help. And that's kind of how like pumping, and I still look at it that way. I always want to try the things. So I'm always interested in like what's coming out in the pumping world and stuff. So I particularly enjoy hearing what lactation consultants have to say about that. So she like gave me that stuff and I was like, okay, cool, fine. And then that's when I went home and experienced all of that. So it was just, again, lack of support, but the fact that I felt so defeated that was the decision that I chose for that. And I know you've spoken on this. I know some other lactation consultants in social media have drawn attention to this, and I agree that it is the lack of education and support, and even just the full knowledge of breastfeeding, the support that's out there, and as well as like the formula feeding and the support that's out there. Because as you mentioned, the difference between bottle and breast, obviously babies can take both and they do, but you have to work on that. You have to find a flow. You need to think about the time periods and the timing of when you're going to introduce bottle, the nipples, there's so many different nipples out there. So it's just different things like that.
And to add to that too,
Yeah.
just because it fits in perfectly, is lactation consultants can help with formula feeding too. We absolutely
100%.
help with formula feeding all the time. What's
Yes.
tricky is if you are using your insurance, if you
Ugh.
that makes it really hard for lactation consultants
Yeah.
to help with formula feeding a lot of times, if it's not combo feeding, because of the certain codes that they need to submit to the insurance. So it's like it's just one of those things where it's like you might think a lactation consultant can't help you if you are choosing to exclusively formula feed, but they can if they're not working through insurance. It's the insurance can't always. Now, sometimes if depending on their different credentials, they can bill it differently, but it's like that's the red tape that insurance puts on support. So keep that in mind too, that it's not always lactation consultants being judgy. Sometimes there's like actual red tape on the support they're allowed to provide.
And you would think most people would understand that nowadays with the way things are working and just where we're starting to shift with the awakening in just the medical field in general, especially me. And like, I'm a Medicaid doula now. So like, I understand. I've worked in human services for a very long time. So I'm very used to submitting billing and things for the services that I've provided. But it's the same thing, because then there are limitations and there are certain things that they want to see, especially in those documentations, certain words, certain actions that you have performed within that service, that they will be like, okay, we will now reimburse you for that. So it makes total sense. And that's why part of me is like, there are pros and cons to having your insurance covered by this kind of stuff. And this is why, especially coming from the other side, trying to also see like, how can I optimize that for my clients so that not only am I getting the most out of this, in my case, the Medicaid reimbursement, which is far low than the private rates, right? So, and I'm sure insurance is probably not any better when it comes to certain industries. It's the same thing. It's like, I want to make sure that my clients are getting the same quality from me as anyone who's going to pay my full fee. But how do you work within those limitations? It's hard.
There's just like a whole other conversation, right?
It really is. It's
a whole other conversation.
But I don't want to bore anyone with that, but
no, but it's one of those things that I think parents don't necessarily realize, that it's like that compromises the quality of care that you're getting. So we have to go back to making sure that we're getting the support we deserve. And there's so many things working against that. It is so frustrating. But let's keep going with your story. So first baby, like everything fell off. Second baby, everything was kind of like weird. You tried, but you were very like not attached to an outcome, but then life and the world happened and was like, well, crap. And so now you're on your third baby and you're like, this time's going to be different. What did you do differently? What was different? What was the same? How did you navigate this?
We are going to go ahead and pause there because this is a pretty long story and the rest of it is really, really great. We are going to come back next time to finish Nicole's story. If Nicole's story resonates with you and you feel like you have been poorly prepared for breastfeeding, you haven't seen a lot of people around you breastfeeding, and now you're struggling and you just feel lost and confused and the support you thought you had just isn't there, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not alone. There are so many resources available for you. Right now, you can grab access to the Breastfeeding Rescue Plan, which is an online library of all the breastfeeding resources I have curated for moms like you to start getting answers right now without having to wait for a consult. But if you do want one-to-one support, I have that available too. I offer 3 and 6 week support packages to make sure you're getting the ongoing support and answers you deserve. We'll see you next time to finish Nicole's story.